So in my last video, I was watching the Permian Triassic Mayhem, Earth's largest mass extinction. I just posted already the kaboom. 'Cause I'm pretty sure he said kaboom in the video. I'm pretty sure. I'm not even certain, but I'm pretty sure enough to name it that. Anyway, besides the point. I was looking into bar galaxies while I was eating. I was like, well, I don't want to play this, so I'm gonna look into bar galaxies because I do my due diligence, not to be like, look at me recording. Like I didn't start doing it so that I could then record, but then I found some things to record, and I deep sky videos.
So it's one of these ones with quite loose spiral.
I'm a little confused. I thought this was someone else's.
It feels a little bit like...
Oh, she's on it. Okay. It's her video. She's on it. I just thought it was her channel, too. I didn't realize there was a Deep Sky video channel. But this... So, I was saying in that video that the universe, basically, the ammonites and so on, they will form around a nucleus seed of either a 1 or 0 or something in between, let's say, where, or even not in between, maybe beyond to a point where it approaches a 0 again, because it's like a sphere essentially. Where is it? No. So, yeah. So the nucleus will form around a particle or like a system that has a shape. And dependent on its shape, it will be either a good nucleus for producing a large spiral, or at some point it will become unstable. So, like here, the nucleus of this became unstable, and it just no longer, the energy flows literally no longer could produce the stable system, and it divided into particulates and divided again. And I talked about this in my last video and several times, so I'm not going to go in detail. I know if people are just seeing this like, you're just going to move on. I am. Look back. What was I saying though? Oh yeah. So it occurred to me that maybe like the quote best, the most stable seed, or although maybe it's both, is a seed of a 1, like a bar galaxy is what I was saying. Well, maybe bar galaxies form that way because they have essentially a seed of a 1 that is what's that, and then other times they don't have that, and they have a seed of what approaches a 0, like an opening, like a hurricane, like an eye. And so I've been saying kind of like this literally is like a nucleus, and it's surrounding like matrix. It's plate kind of thing. So like it's probably best the way I've been describing it. Like there's literally particles that are larger and larger, but smaller than planets within Earth and around Earth. But within Earth, here. This is what I was looking for. That form kind of underneath the surface like this, like larger conglomerations underneath the surface forming, and then they support a structure over top of them that is essentially like it breaks down like based on that it has a supporting system there, like where this can also be like in the rock and above the layer. It's, like, so it can also be up here, like out here, like through the layer and into the next layer, on top of the layer, thrown on top of the layer. depending on what occurred. But it's almost like so a 1 and a 0, in my thoughts, like I really think this makes sense. A 1 is like a bar galaxy, truly, and a 0 is like when it doesn't have a bar galaxy structure. And she said something that really resonated, so I want to say this.
Galaxy. So it's one of these ones with quite loose spiral arms. If we look back at the image again, you can see that there's lots of complex structure in there. They're quite loose wound, so they're sort of not one of these early type structures. It's definitely one of these late type spirals. So
Okay, a lot of structure in there. Mind you, Africa. So if we imagine Africa is kind of like it literally is the phi ratio beginning of the entire. Let me bring it up before I go talking about this in front of people who literally don't know what I'm talking about, because they don't know what I'm talking about. It's not my fault. I mean, obviously it is in some way because I talk like that, but like, it's really not my fault. Where is my Photoshop? Images. Essentially, I know this is hard to see and hard to believe when you don't know what I'm talking about. Here's Africa. The actual, like, beginning of a spiral that then spirals outward. I just had a thought. I don't want to speak it because it's too hard to transmit right now. Hopefully I remember it. That's kind of part of why I'm doing this, is because I want to document it. I'm pretty much like, where this line of reasoning is approaching is like, is there like a core also? Anyway, like a galactic core in some way of the flat Earth in Africa there. That's of a different nature, but of a similar nature in this. Anyway, as what I'm going to say later, which would then give a little credence to flat Earth. I mean, for sure, there's something to it in that it exists in reality and is such like a hot topic. It's obviously not understood by most people who are proponents of it. No offense, in terms of its depth, based on what I hear people say. But I'm still literally like, well, there's possibilities here. So like. Anyway, I entertain it and I just see something that maybe points in its direction sometimes, and if I dare acknowledge that it points in its direction, people are offended. It's fucking absurd, dudes. Because I don't care. It's like I don't want the Earth to be flat. It's not like something I'm like, that Earth needs to be flat. These freaking scientists and people be like, oh, he's reading the Bible thinking the Earth is flat. Like, you don't even know me. I was a fucking atheist till I was like 22. And then I was a staunch agnostic and staunch atheist. Like, not just an atheist, fucking vocal atheist. That shit's not. Ain't no God. Isn't it ironic? Just assumptions, that's all. Besides the point, let's move on. So this spiral literally continued, and it is why the continents have the shape they do after the Earth expanded and filled in the gaps between them, and like why it broke here. It didn't just randomly break here. Like, why not? Well, that's where the energy's at, so we'll just keep going in this way. No, it took the path of least resistance, which was along this flow path where it actually had formed a boundary energetically, like that.
So
Where was I just looking here? and then it went over this way to here, and then basically it couldn't get into the core, so it literally went this way instead. It got expelled from the system. Boom, cut literally across South America, causing another phi ratio. Like, scientists don't even know this is occurring. This shit, I can just point to them and be like, you don't even know about this, so you have to change your viewpoint in view of it at some point. Like, I know each individual thing is obviously not like doing it, but like starting here, wrapping around. I know this is a little confusing, but it cut literally through here, which is probably why this region formed, which is like lightning capital of the world kind of thing. But it cut through here, and then it cleanly cuts, and it literally is a phi ratio curve. And then it, like, the phi ratio goes in this way, but it like got expelled, but the energy just literally cut across this phi ratio that was going this way, and between Central America and South America, which was wrapped around here. So it basically produced, obviously not all the way down here, but probably other island types debris that got scattered all around. Is like there's debris from this region that just got scattered into islands all over the place, but then there's more stuff that stayed attached to like the North America. So like the Yucatan Peninsula is attached, but it didn't like it. It exploded violently and sent debris in arcs out in this direction, and then also literally it shoved in mountains here as it was moving. It physically pressed into South America, pushed up mountains, and then it sent a wave of energy in the newly forming ocean bed that created like peaks within it that were then above the subsequent sea level. And here we are with these island arcs. So it wasn't happy about it, but it stayed as one, whereas pieces like this broke away from and that occurred over here. So like where these came from exactly, I'm not sure, because this is the debris pile pretty much. Because when it exploded, it actually caused the energy to like come out of the earth here and out this way largely, and pushing this way as well, pushing up mountains. But because it was pushing these mountains up, it was just from basically here down, these mountains, at least here down, maybe not, these might have been somewhat related to the same process as these, but these probably not though. I think from here up, these ones are from the energy trying to get in towards the core of that phi ratio spiral and meeting resistance and just pushing up mountains, and literally just the energy flow like a if you take a hose and put your finger over it, it just sprayed out into the Pacific and sent literally a wave of energy through it, which moved Australia out of this region where it was filled in here. Although there may be missing material that is the moon. I've talked about that, or part of is the moon. I know how ridiculous that sounds. That literally got escape velocity kind of energy to literally get a chunk of the Earth off. So that even though it expanded, it didn't actually grow in radius that much, because it just split and became the moon and the Earth rather than just the Earth that had no moon at the time. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that like evidence of historically, like there isn't really like a much record of anyone saying a time before the moon kind of stuff. So that might, if it is the case, it's literally like an intentionally buried subtlety because we designed this ourselves to be this way, to like play out the way it does. Just saying. Like, well, we can't find out about that too soon. It's just like this. Like, this can't be a shallogram. Obviously, it has to be subtly. Where one of them is glaringly obvious once you see it, but it's not so obvious alone. And the other one is not obvious enough that their coupling doesn't like really just instantaneously raise alarms for anyone just looking at it. But okay, so let me go back to what I even started doing this for.
Galaxy. So it's one of these ones with quite loose spiral arms. If we look back at
So loose spiral arms. So that made me think, what if this galaxy is kind of like, is literally kind of like one of those particles underneath the surface, like this. Like here's the nucleus, and here's the disk of the galaxy.
the
Nucleus, disk of the galaxy. It's just a different angle where like its radiation literally passes through enough where we see this energy flow in this vortex here. But really, it's not necessarily always like exactly center, maybe, depending on if it's like this underneath the surface, if it penetrated through the surface and is like within centered, or if the thing, or if it formed around it, like this, like this particle had all this stuff form around it. This is some boulder somehow formed somewhere, or some that basically was moving along after being formed, and just got stuck. It just got stuck in the water, just piled shit up on around it. Pardon me to curse. Piled debris around it until it formed a stable system. Like imagine like this big rock comes in, and then like some little bit of dusty type particulate substance like is coming in, but also like pebbles and other things. And then as the layers form, there's pebbles, there's bigger rocks intermixed, and then they each form like little nucleuses that hold a system more rigidly than its surroundings, so that it's able to be stable and not like erode away. So there's probably a bunch of like little particles intermixed, creating that are kind of playing part, larger systems that are playing part in shaping like the way these cracks form, and all, like every subtle nuance of that nature. But like maybe this is a galaxy and this is a disk of a galaxy, or this is a disk of a galaxy and this is like the gamma ray emissions from the top or whatever. Like the thing that looks like a beam coming out the top is actually the layer that rests on it, and the layer that is actually part of the galaxy is a surrounding layer that's more typically like this. I don't know if there's any instances of suggestions where the galaxy's disk is off center, like like it is above kind of the position of the black hole that it orbits, which would be maybe possible if like it supports things that are more massive or less massive, but we see as light. That's probably a thing. That's probably a thing where there's like a system that's massive enough that it literally supports like a sheet above it that we see the light from, but we don't see the sheet below this because it's radiating. I guess we see it just in a different spectrum, and like it literally is layered though, like sheets on one on top of another, where there's like a layer that rests above the galaxy like this. Like, I don't know where it's just because the invisible light spectrum, this portion doesn't radiate. It radiates, it's too dense. It radiates in like, let's say, ultraviolet or something. And so this one's maybe, or below it is, I guess above it would probably be the least dense, most porous, most exposed to erosions, least pressure from above on it.
Image again, you can see that there's lots of complex structure in there.
She said lots of complex structure in there, and then that it is suggestive of an older galaxy, which, like the Earth used to be a single landmass.
They're quite loose, wound.
It used to be well, like shapened.
So they're sort of not one of these early type structures. It's definitely one of these late type spirals. So this is one of the rare ones. So this paper also looked for like statistical correlation with rings. So we see lots of ring galaxies before. We talked about that on this channel because they tend to be correlated with bars, but actually there was no correlation with the ring. Because if you think about the Ansei, it's almost kind of like it's a part of a section of the ring in a way, like you've lost the sort of tops and the bottom bit. But actually they found that there was no correlation with like bars and rings and bars with Anseis in this paper. It took until actually earlier this year for a simulation paper to really come out actually studying what was going on in these Ansei. So I've got that paper too. This one, Building the Peanut. Great title. You know, in simulations, how do you get these structures in galaxies?
Building the Peanuts.
With bars.
Simulation, peanut-shaped structures, I see. Peanut-shaped features observed in a significant fraction of disk galaxies are thought to have formed from vertically buckled bars. X peanut-shaped. Oh my god. They're literally shallograms.
They might not have pretty pictures.
They have compressive forces applied at 2 points like the chakras. They're literally shallograms. This one maybe doesn't show the chakras coming up to the, like that. But there was a particle there. Maybe this doesn't even have a particle. Here's a shallogram. This one with a bar galaxy. It's a bar. It's a bar shallogram. I was thinking it would probably be useful to actually study the ones with the bars versus the ones with what would probably be essentially zero. Like, I think they're both stable. Maybe like they're like the 2 points, the anode and cathode, where the energy flow is really by connecting the two. Maybe it's not. It would be wrong to not acknowledge that, like, assume nothing is all that is. Therefore, it is equal and opposite with itself. and therefore it is like this like thing that just creates duality out of oneness of nothing. Like it is like a seed of nothing that becomes duality, like two poles, but it's zero, so it's nothing. But it has a duality to it where it's nothing and everything. So it's kind of does have two poles to it. In a sense, if you assume nothing, which is really like the least assumption one can do. You know, truly, like, what else can you assume less than nothing? I guess literally not even assume nothing. And then at that point, that's where, like, the truth, again, of the oneness of all. All is one, one is all. Certainly one is all. Like, I'm not you, you are not me. I can acknowledge that. But also, we are one. Like, I can acknowledge that too. And maybe we are one. Like, I've considered and spoke about before, like, the concept of that, like, my life when I die, and your life when you die, and everyone else's life when they die, is literally just part of one continuous thread of one life that just is experiencing everything, and it wraps around and creates particles, moves on, wraps around and creates a particle. People, you and I, moves on to, and just literally wraps around over and over and over itself, us, ourself, until we have created the universe manifest, and we then go and live in it, and the wheel of time turns, and here we are. Something like that. Ages come and pass soon. Wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass soon, leaving memories that become legend. Even myth is long. Wait. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the third age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose above the great mountainous island of tree mulking. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. This book series is excellent, although it does kind of turn into maybe too many books. I can't imagine trying to write that, though. It's like over a 10,000 page story that you try to, like, coalesce into a cohesive unit. Like, holy how in, like, I mean, I did it in my own way, so I guess I can't imagine, but, like, I couldn't be that dedicated to writing a book, I guess, myself, like, in this life. But I mean, obviously, thank God I was in Robert Jordan's life, because fuck yeah. Like, what a fucking gift to this world that people aren't that aware of, though it started to become a TV series at least, which is cool. So it's kind of out there now. This used to be my jam. I'm just going to say it. It's my jam. Used to be. It's been a while. I'm excited for season 2. If it happens, that's the thing. The world could end any day. We're like on the cusp of World War III any day. Like, what the fuck could happen any day? Not just World War III, but even if not World War III, a slow leading into a rapid economic collapse, and then World War III. Like, it's really just the inevitable is, if we don't fucking change our ways as a people, which maybe is on me because I am you, and it really is that simple in some ways, that we all are one, and maybe if I changed it, really could have a major effect. Okay, but okay.
Pictures of actual space, but they've got pretty pictures of simulations. I mean, they're not as cool, but they're still pretty cool. These are the images of the simulation. That they've made, and so they're at different times. So they start from t of 0 over here, and they end up 10. 10 billion years later, and these are at the different snapshots in that simulation. And so they're saying that the answer basically doesn't form on the bar for a very long time. So like 4 to 10 gig years, very precise. And what they actually found in this paper was that there is this very strong connection to these peanut bars, these peanut bulges. So Mike talked about this, where if you have a bar structure in a galaxy, you have instabilities in that disk, which are going to cause that bar to sort of flop around and break.
So maybe the one is not as good of a seed as I thought it was.
And what that causes is that you end up spreading the stars out, and you end up getting a kind of an X structure as it flops around, and that can
Maybe the one is like the dividing process.
tend to look like a sort of a peanut in a shell. And so what they found is that that's actually very tightly linked to the answer as well. So that answer, to form one of those things, you also need not just one of these instabilities, but you need 2 of them to occur. And obviously they're things that happen over very, very long timescales, which is why you kind of have to wait around so long for.
This is perhaps highly speculative and just utterly based on a model. I'm not sure how reliable because essentially a lot of times it's like, even though it's not through the lens that I see things through, it's still useful information, but sometimes it's literally simulation based on the lens. So it's pretty much just the lens. Here's what the lens shows, and like at that point it's useless information, like, except for that it's a false conclusion and so on. But like, so I'm not sure this is a simulation. So there's that. Whether or not it's heavily simulation or based on like, I mean, obviously it's based on data, but it could just be that they see several stages and figure this is the sequence, and then let's try to model it, and based on us trying to model it, this is what our models conclude is how this is formed. But I would say this really, I mean, it looks like a magnetic field right there. That literally looks like a magnetic field. It's just pinching the layers. It's like like the calcium, the calcite in this video. You'll have to watch this video to know what I'm talking about more thoroughly. Where it rises and saturates this yellow or undersaturates, so it removes, it like pushes that boundary up and fills in the region with something else, and then the energy subsides and it basically goes back down to as it generally was. So what's going on here is it's just like the presence of calcium carbonate or whatever. I think that's carbonate. I don't even know. But so I was saying, it's like this though, where like the energy pushes outward physically to a higher distance, and then because the resistance it's facing of this whatever this is, this energy that is moving outward, like it's some like internal like ethereal flows that are creating like a swelling of layers within the Earth while the Earth was supernovaing, by the way. Well, in this case, it was a minor step. It was like a stage in the decay process, probably is more likely a good way to describe it. And so, what was I saying? Oh yeah, but then like around it, the layer above it and below it, they're not just like they're not just like flat across. They do like this. Like here's a layer, and here's the galaxy. So the layer, like it generally it will be like this, like it just kind of within there, like here. But then sometimes it'll be like here, where the surroundings are literally carved out by ethereal flows. Because what happened here was a current passed through this way, through a physical, around, or not just this way. It passed around or through these layers this way, around this a particle that's here. Sorry, I will like figure out what I'm saying. I know it sounds like I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes when I'm just like slinging words. This is a highly complex subject matter that I simplify sufficiently to transmit the information somehow. I don't know how. Okay. And I'm obviously figuring it out as I go, but also figuring it out. So bear with me. So the energy flow, though, like definitely goes through the layers. And there's a particle here, like a bigger conglomerate that's more like more like this, like just a bigger particle that physically was present within it probably even formed partly because it looks like these are related. Like there's a channel that would be like carved this whole way potentially, and just not actually producing the layering because only here was there sufficient energy flows to produce the actual shallogram appearance because that's what's occurring. And then here's another one here with these openings just started, so we can see from these two that essentially it carves out the low density region where the particle is not at. That's the key. It carves out the low density region where the particle is not. When heat flows and energy flows are propagating through and around the particle. Basically, the particle is like, nah, son, and it goes around it, and it basically carves around it, producing this opening until finally there's no way through except through the particle. And then we have this formation of a shallogram type feature. That's just common. It's very common in shallograms. Literally 3. And this one just pointed out, clearly the energy prefers to flow around the edge. It's subtle ether flows, heat flows that are just vortexing, and they literally preferentially carve through the edge first in a way where it's based on physics. It's not a fossil. Just to point that out real quick. Here's another one. Like this looks identical in nature to this. Although I don't know if that's quite the image I was thinking of.
Or one of these things, and it's that spreading out at the end of the
This is 2 big old layers here, big old layers, pinching it, just like the shallogram, just like Damodar Kund.
instabilities that they think is what's causing the answer.
Okay, let's see what else we can find on bar galaxies. Thanks, guy. Thanks, Becky. Listen, I always feel weird watching people's content and reacting to it and knowing they may see it someday and think, other things. Who knows? Pardon me. That person's using my content. I don't appreciate that. It's fair use, according to. Although maybe I am crossing boundaries where like the system says it's okay, so I do it, even though I know maybe people might not appreciate it in some way. So maybe I should get permission per se with everyone to use their content. But then realistically, like, where would I be now? So that's that. Please excuse me. Okay. I don't see. Okay, this guy is talking about peanut and bar galaxies, so that's good.
It's a galaxy for a change. There are a lot of things in the Messier catalogue which aren't galaxies.
Professor Mike Merrifield.
Although, to be fair, it's not the nicest galaxy. I did pick a fairly ordinary
That's valid. Valid.
looking galaxy.
Has it got a cool name like the Golden Banana or the Death Spiral or anything?
No, Messier 98 is all there is, I'm afraid. Don't think it's got any. I mean, it's got an NGC number and all sorts of other telephone numbers you could refer to it by, but Messier 98 is the shortest and sweetest.
Oh, can we give us a look? Let's name it.
You want to look? There we go.
Let's give it a name.
Well, it's a bit of a story with it, so maybe if we do the story, there might be something at the end. It probably is a very nice looking spiral galaxy, and you can kind of see that there are indeed the spiral arms there. The reason why it doesn't look anywhere near as spectacular as some of the other spiral galaxies like Messier 51 is because it's so close to edge on. And so you can't see much of the structure in the disk of this galaxy. So remember, these galaxies have a flat disk-like bit and then this sort of round, bulgy bit in the middle. And the bit that's always the pretty thing, the thing that makes these galaxies beautiful, tends to be the spiral structure in the disk. And of course, when the disk gets very close to edge on, like
Whoa. Look at that bend. I don't know if I can find this one. Maybe it's this one. One of them. I think that might do it too. See how it's got like it's got an abrupt bend in the early phases of the spiral, but then it becomes smooth. Some of them do that pretty distinctly. I'm not sure if that's the one that I was thinking of. I feel like it's better, more distinct than that. Although, maybe I don't have the picture here. It's hard to keep them. Like, I also feel bad taking pictures of all this stuff and then using it here. Like, so, there's, even though I do it, obviously. Is it this one, maybe? No. Big old turd. I don't know. Maybe this one? This one's insane, dudes. Like, it's a hand. It's literally a hand. A creepy-ish looking hand this side. There's a sphere getting compressed. Bulging out. Here, supernova outward. Where I was looking for something. No, here it is. Here it is. Clear as day. This is not a fossil. Fossils don't polygonally form. Although maybe if someone can show me a shell of a living creature that actually formed polygonally early on, that would be useful to see. Then let's keep going though, like the particle, when it gets compressed, maybe this, with galaxies, I had this thought, when the particle gets compressed with galaxies, maybe it produces like a spread of other subtle systems within it that are detectable as something of this nature sometimes. It is kind of reminiscent of just literally the supernova 1987A. Whoa. Okay. What else? What was I just?
The disk, and of course, when the disk gets very close to edge on like this, you just can't see much of it because you don't have that much sort of perspective to be able to see it the way you can when it's face on.
I think that makes it prettier. I think it makes it look more three-dimensional.
It certainly has that aspect, yeah, you do get that real sense, and you can really sort of convince yourself that there really are two components. You know, when you see a galaxy that's face on, it just, you know, you just see, as you say, you see this sort of flat thing to it. Spectacular as some of the other spiral galaxies like Messier 51 is because it's so close to edge on, and so you can't see much of the structure in the disk of this galaxy. So remember, these galaxies have a flat disk-like bit and then this sort of round bulgy bit in the middle. And the bit that's always the pretty thing, the thing that makes these galaxies beautiful, tends to be the spiral structure in the disk.
Kind of like the Pacific Ocean.
And of course, when the disk gets very close to edge on like this,
it's almost like a more gaseous, spread out thing. Like at the end of the spiral, it produces, or maybe this is the oldest and most dense. The spent material, so maybe this is more like the continental shelf and this is like the Pacific Ocean where it exploded.
You just can't see much of it because you don't have that much sort of perspective to be able to see it the way you can when it's face on.
I think that makes it prettier. I think it makes it look more three-dimensional.
It certainly has that aspect, yeah, you do get that real sense, and you can really sort of convince yourself that there really are two components. You know, when you see a galaxy that's face on, it just, you know, you just see, as you say, you see this sort of flat thing to it. But here, because it's closer to edge on, you really can convince yourself there are two structures here. There was this disc-like thing close to edge on, and then there's this much rounder thing in the middle. But the story I wanted to talk about actually is the bit in the middle, the bulge in the middle. And I said it's round, but actually if you look at this thing more closely, you can sort of convince yourself that this really isn't terribly round, what's going on in the middle. Part of the problem why it's hard to tell, in this case, is because there's all this dust. You can see this reddish streak across the middle here. That's dust absorption between us and the middle of the galaxy.
Makes me think of shalligrams again. Let's find one. I mean, maybe this one's a good one, just that it has like a different material here. But I was thinking more like the gold. I don't know if I took any pictures really of that. Just like a single shalligram chakra, like one side. A lot of times, just like this one, will have like bits of gold like through it. Can kind of see it in the one I have. It's not gold, it's just like a dust, I guess would be maybe a good way to describe it. Just
probably associated with the disk of this system. So it's kind of hard to see what's going on, but
Maybe over here is that same gold dust stuff like shoved out into the edge from some similar event in the past.
if we switch to the infrared, then you can see through all that dust. And so what this galaxy looks like in the infrared is this. So at some level, it's nowhere near as dramatic a picture because it's not as high quality in terms of the image, but it does really see that structure in the middle. And if you look at it quite closely, you can see there is this very sort of strong X-like structure in the middle there. And that's not an artifact, that's nothing to do with diffraction spikes or any of those things to do with the telescope. It really is intrinsic to this galaxy that it has this very sort of strong X-like structure in the middle of it, which is what I wanted to talk about.
Well, I think we're getting our name as well. It's Galaxy X.
Galaxy X would be a good one for it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, go.
X marks the spot.
Go on then. What's the X?
There's a story associated with this, and actually this is connects back to my own research as well, which is people have known about this for a long time, and in fact, so that's a very extreme example. More generally what you see is instead of seeing something round in the middle, you tend to see something which is boxy, or in slightly more extreme cases, it kind of has a two-lobe structure to it, and that's usually described.
More extreme cases, again, let's go to shallograms. So this one's got a nice sphere, nice perfect sphere, very, very nice sphere. You can even see kind of little coloration on its surface. Almost like little continents, who knows. But perfect sphere. But they're not all like that. Like, let me show you this one. If you want, obviously. If you haven't seen it already. This one is mid-supernova, but then it froze in time. So we just see, literally, it's splitting. Is that the best angle I have? It splits. It even has like little red pellet, like red things in there. But it's mid-split. Maybe that's kind of... But frozen, so like it's stable like that. Like the...
And that's usually described as kind of a peanut-shaped bulge because it looks like a peanut still in its shell. And people have been interested in where these peanut-shaped structures came from for a very long time. There was a theory which said, we also know that quite a lot of galaxies have these rectangular bar structures in the middle of them when you see them face on. So when you see them edge on, you see these peanut structures. When you look at face-on galaxies, you quite often see these bar-like structures. And they're just an instability that if you just have a disk of stars all orbiting around initially on circular orbits, they tend to rearrange themselves in this way to create these bars in the middle. But that's all kind of happening in the plane...
Say that again, please.
...bulge, because it looks like a peanut still in its shell. And people have been interested in where these peanut-shaped structures came from for a very long time. There was a theory which said, we also know that quite a lot of galaxies have these rectangular bar structures in the middle of them when you see them face on. So when you see them edge on, you see these peanut structures. When you look at face-on galaxies, you quite often see these bar-like structures. And they're just an instability that if you just have a disk of stars all orbiting around initially on circular orbits, they tend to rearrange themselves in this way to create these bars in the middle. But that's all kind of happening in the plane of the disk. But there's a further instability which kicks in once this bar is formed, which actually is it starts to flop backwards and forwards out of the plane of the galaxy. So it's a kind of a buckling instability. The thing buckles backwards and forwards. And over time...
Oh, dear God. Maybe all as one is very highly unstable. Once it stably forms, it causes a buckling and a separation process.
It's if you took a snapshot early on in this process, you'd see it bent one way or the other. But over time, it kind of fills out that whole region and creates one of these peanut-shaped structures. So for quite a long time, there had been this theory that said...
Okay, there is the side of things that I don't know.
That these peanut-shaped structures are in these...
Don't know if that's...
extreme cases, these X-like structures that you see in M98 are associated with a bar in this galaxy that if it...
What was that?
structures that you see in M9...
What the? See, this is a good example of one where it looks like it's literally not centered. Like it's the chakra is extending so far into the galaxy disk that the particle nucleus of the disk is probably off center a bit.
98 are associated with a bar in this
Or this one's more centered.
galaxy, that if it were face on you'd see a bar, but edge on you see the kind of the end state of this bar where it's gone through this buckling process and formed this peanut-shaped structure. So I got kind of interested in this with a colleague, a guy called Konrad Kaiken, a number of years.
It'd be funny if there was just like, that's how black holes supernova. Something. Like we can't see the full extent of its like stars are in the Goldilocks zone for really seeing the eruptiveness of the process. Where Earth, it was just like we could live on the Earth while it happened, and black holes, we can't even really tell that it's going on. It's just like a subtlety like this, maybe. Because I've not heard of any remnants of black hole supernova type of things that are like really pointed to as like this is the remnant of a black hole supernova. Because I don't think we even think that that's a thing, because we really don't think that black holes can really emit much of anything. Although Hawking radiation kind of worked its way in after the fact, but like we really didn't think it could emit anything, and so not that that's true, but we just don't know what the black holes are. It seems like they might even be literally the entire disk of the galaxy is like the actual crust or mantle or whatever of the system, maybe.
Years ago, and we looked at, well, is there some way to tell? And it turns out that, of course, there is this problem that if a galaxy's face on, you see the bar, if it's edge on, you see the peanut structure, but you never get to see both at once because the galaxy is either one or the other. But we figured out that in an edge-on galaxy where you can see these peanut structures, there's a very characteristic signature you can see in the orbits of material going around. Because the thing you can measure by measuring Doppler shifts is the line of sight motions. And of course, if you've got an edge-on galaxy, typically you just see one side going away from you, the other side coming towards you, because the whole thing's rotating. But what we showed is that there's a much subtler signature. Because the orbits aren't exactly circles anymore, you start seeing something very characteristic in the kinematics. And so we made this suggestion, this hypothesis, that actually these two things were connected, and that we could test that hypothesis by looking at some edge-on galaxies, and those that had these peanut-shaped structures in the middle, we should see these weird kinematics associated with a bar. Those that have round bulges, we shouldn't. So we did that, and it worked. It turns out that there really is this very clear connection, that where you have a peanut-shaped bulge, you see this clear kinematic signature of a bar, and where you have a round bulge, you don't.
Are those kinematics you're looking at of stars that are in the structure itself, or stars that are outside the structure interacting?
A bar definitely, like this is probably a good representation of a bar galaxy, like what's going on maybe, where it's literally two systems that have divided but are like kind of the equal opposites that make up the bar's two like end nodes. Where is it? The one I just showed with the splitting, there it is. So it like split, and there's like two end nodes that make a bar kind of thing. Whereas sometimes it doesn't, like there's no particle anymore. It's just gone. It explodes into a nebula.
With it.
It's mostly stars. It's a bit of both, because you can see the stars in the structure itself, but actually, even if you just look at gas, for example, so typically the gas is just orbiting in the disk of the galaxy, because it feels the gravitational pull of this bar in the middle, its orbits get distorted as well. So even just in gas, which is probably not directly associated with this peanut-shaped structure, you can still see this very clear characteristic signature of a bar. We got excited about this, and it turns out the key to success in astronomy is coming up with a good tag for it, a good angle for it. Right? And so the angle we came up with this is, we called it the Snickers Hypothesis, which is there a peanut in every bar, basically? So we were able to show, indeed, confirm this Snickers hypothesis, that there is indeed a peanut in every bar. And it turns out when you come up with a nice angle like that, the press gets quite interested in the work that you're doing. So we ended up appearing in various newspapers. You can tell quite how long ago this is by the yellowed state of this newspaper cutting that I kept.
You realise you are a media tart.
Well, demonstrably so, yes. So this was actually April 9th. So we ended up appearing in various newspapers. You can tell quite how long ago this is by the yellowed state of this newspaper cutting that I kept.
You realise you are a media tart.
Well, demonstrably so, yes. So this was actually...
An immediate target, yep.
The April 1996 we did this. Or when the...
We don't choose this life. You know what I'm saying?
At least when this article came out, so yes. Peanut bar inspires galaxy theory. And the first paragraph is, art may imitate life, but now cosmology is imitating confectionery. Inspired by Galaxy and Mars.
Cosmology is imitating. Okay. They mean like the study of, which is, I guess, cosmology.
Bars and Milky Ways, Dr. Michael Merrifield of Southampton University, where I was at the time, has come up with the Snickers peanut bar hypothesis, giving for the first time a three-dimensional picture of the central parts of spiral galaxies. This is a really extreme version of the peanut, because remember what happens is the thing kind of flexes backwards and forwards, and you tend to end up with sort of a build-up at the edges. And if it's not really a really extreme case, when you take a picture of it, all you just see is this overall kind of envelope for the thing. But this is a really extreme case where you can see those two ends of the kind of flopping backwards and forwards, that it's left some stars up there and some stars down there, which creates this beautiful X-shaped structure in the middle.
Professor, it's the extreme peanut galaxy.
There you go.
So it seems like it's when they're dividing, reproducing. Maybe it's like it's not like a bad thing. It's literally like a reproductive thing. Like it divides into a new system, two systems. Like cell reproduction. So maybe it is stable, even though it's dividing. It's like a stable divide that the one allows for. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like 1 and 0 allow things to grow around them, but other like shapes don't allow quite as much like stability as other shapes create around them in a spiral shape, like that, because the beginning is so essential. It doesn't shape around it. The 1 and 0 probably are very stable, so 0 can create something that probably is on the more destructive side. Like, it'll just come in and fucking wipe shit out, take it all. It's just like a vacuum. It's take it all in. Whereas 1 maybe is more peaceful and it's just giving birth to a offspring kind of thing. I'm just trying to think why like the 1 would be like in nature, why that would be the 1 to be like destructive of the 2, because it really is maybe a yin yang where it's not. I don't know. But I do think there's a strong connection, that peanut galaxy thing, to Shalligram, so that's cool. I did not discover what I anticipated realizing with anything in the like furthering the analysis of with this. Instead, it seemed to lead down a different path, so we'll see where it goes. All right, back to the Siberian Traps video, probably.